Welcome to the podcast where we celebrate innovation for a happy planet. I am your host, Abigail Carroll. You might want to listen to this podcast before you pour yourself that cherished morning cup of coffee. Our guest today is Etelle Higonnet, a French-born Yale Law School graduate living in Denmark, who set out to make the coffee industry more environmentally friendly through her organization, Coffee Watch. What she discovered, however, was that environmental degradation was just the tip of the iceberg. The coffee industry is fraught with human injustices as well, including human trafficking, child labor, and slavery. Despite these horrors, Etelle is confident that she can make a difference by getting all of us to vote with our pocketbooks and put pressure on our local governments. Can we have our coffee and our happy planet too? Let's hear it from Etelle. Welcome to the program, Etelle.
Abigail, it's so great to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Well, I'm delighted to have you on, although I must say you've made me have to really question my role in the world when every morning I get up and I look forward to my first cup of coffee of the day.
So many people tell me I've ruined their morning.
You may have ruined my life, but I still appreciate it. So you have started an organization called Coffee Watch.
Yeah.
Tell me about your organization and what problem you're trying to solve here.
Yeah, so Coffee Watch, I guess the easiest way to describe it, it's as if Greenpeace and Amnesty International got together and had a baby, and that baby just wanted to work on coffee. I say this in part because I used to work at Greenpeace and Amnesty, so I'm very influenced by that. But, really my dream is just to end environmental and social abuses in coffee and transform the industry so that it makes the world a better place with every cup, without all this deforestation and pesticide-soaked monoculture and slavery and human trafficking and rape and child labor and poverty. We don't need to have those in our coffee. We can absolutely have ethical, sustainable coffee. And that's kind of my North Star.
Wow. Okay. You just used a lot of big words there. Slavery, deforestation, exploitation. How bad is this situation?
Oh my God, Abigail, it's so bad. I didn't even realize how bad it was until I got geared up to launch Coffee Watch. I knew that coffee was the number 6 driver of deforestation in the world. Like that is actually why I wanted to start Coffee Watch, is because I thought, scientists are telling us we don't have much time. We have to save all these forests before it's too late. Coffee is one of the top drivers. There's 7 big drivers of deforestation in the world. We've got to really change those and turn them around. And coffee is one of them. And it gets very short shrift. I mean, really, basically almost nobody works to combat deforestation in coffee, to name and shame, be kind of a watchdog.
Sorry to interrupt, but why is it deforested? Like, what's the mechanics? Why is coffee contributing to deforestation?
Oh, yeah, great question. Essentially, Abigail, let's say you are a company or a farmer, you're living in wherever, could be Colombia, Indonesia, Brazil, Mexico, could be Vietnam. You buy a plot of forested land. Usually that's the sort of cheapest land.
Yeah.
You chop it down and you plant coffee there.
Okay.
That's full sun monoculture Robusta.
Yeah.
Or you buy a plot of forested land, you keep some trees, you chop a lot of them down, and you plant like agroforestry Arabica kind of coffee. And then over time, as the coffee gets stronger, you chop more and more trees and it gets to be less and less shady. And those ways of growing coffee are very common. That's like the old school sort of business as usual, unethical, unsustainable modus operandi that's characterized. Like most of coffee comes at the expense of forests. It grows on what used to be forested land, but it doesn't have to be that way, right? We can grow coffee on degraded lands. We can find degraded lands, in fact, and like regenerate them by putting agroforestry coffee. You plant coffee and they put lots of trees in and among the coffee, and the coffee kind of allows you financially to make an agroforest that is healing the soil. That's like, there's this company called Slow Forest Coffee that's their whole business model. They buy trashed soil that's destroyed, and then they plant agroforestry coffee there to heal the ecosystem.
Interesting. So there are these questions in the United States and Canada, other places where we have solar farms. I've actually read articles that saying like agriculture grown under the solar panels that are in the fields does very well because it actually traps in some of the humidity. But maybe coffee doesn't need that humidity. I don't know.
Oh, no, coffee does need humidity. So you're right. I mean, the beautiful thing about these solar farms is actually you can marry them with agriculture. So I love wine. I'm French. Part of my ancestors had a vineyard back in the day. I'm a wine enthusiast, I guess you could say.
Because you're French, too. So,
and I was very lucky to be able to be one of the founding members of the Sustainable Wine Roundtable. So I kind of stay plugged into news about sustainable wine. It turns out solar and wine love each other. I guess you could say Dionysus and Apollo are like best buds because you're right that, when you have, especially in the southern Mediterranean region where it's very hot and you have these heat domes and you can have like droughts, when you mix solar panels and vines, it can be incredibly beneficial for the vines and really good for the quality of the wine.
Interesting. Yeah. So there is a way to do this, an environmental way that is much more sustainable.
Oh, yeah, Abigail.
And it's just not the cheapest way.
It's not necessarily the cheapest way. But, you're 100% right. We can absolutely do this an environmental way. Like, there are two paths. We've chosen a garbage path, and there's an environmentally sound path, and we can just shift from one to the other. And essentially, coffee, for the most part, loves trees because if one thing that you said, it's moisture. Coffee likes air moisture and it likes rainfall. Coffee is a very finicky, sensitive plant that does not like heat domes and superstorms and droughts and climate chaos. It is very finicky. It doesn't like that at all. And trees actually not only keep air moisture, they keep soil moisture. Yeah. They keep soil health. They act as like giant straws and sponges that suck up water when there's been a superstorm, but they also maintain moisture and coolness when you have like a super hot drought. So trees are awesome for most coffee. We have kind of weirdly decided to develop this full sun Robusta strain, which is kind of a stupid, weird, bad human idea that we maybe should revisit.
Is that because of harvesting? Because the trees would get in the way of like machinery? I mean, I know that's a problem with crops. Like why if you
want to do
not getting married. Yeah.
Yes. 100%. If you want to do highly
we need our new machines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Solar. Yeah, these huge plantations that are full sun, Robusta, they lend themselves much better to highly mechanized agriculture.
Yeah. So the deforestation, the environmental part of this is one thing that Coffee Watch is taking on, but you also talk about just basically human exploitation, and we've talked about slavery. Tell me about the human component here. And we have these international rules about slavery and things like that. How can this be happening today in 2025?
It's crazy. It's just batshit crazy. Sounds like a real downer, and it will get better afterwards, I promise, because I will talk about solutions and how we can make it better. But let me just be very blunt. Pretty much every time you drink a cup of coffee, you're drinking poverty, probably extreme poverty. And many times that you drink a cup of coffee, you are drinking child labor or slavery, or debt bondage, or human trafficking, or some weird toxic combination of that. And I say this because there are millions of kids working at coffee, like millions, literally. There's no one fantastically methodologically sound, really good meta study of child labor in coffee. Like we have something like that in cocoa, actually, that was done by these incredible scholars at Newark, and before that at Tulane. It was paid for by the Department of Labor before it got doged by Mr. Musk. Thank you. And so we don't have something quite like that for coffee. What we have is the best studies that the most methodologically impressive scholars, either NGO or university folks, have done in different places. So here's just like 3 examples. I could go on all night, but in the interest of time, This really, really important study was done on Ethiopia by these scholars from Scandinavian universities, some of whom are of Ethiopian origin. It focused on Ethiopian coffee farmers and child labor. They found that around 91% of coffee farmer families were using child labor.
Wow.
Then there's another study that was done, also actually funded by U.S. Department of Labor before it got dodged. Thank you, Mr. Muska Trump. And that study in Colombia found that around 74% of coffee farming families in that country use child labor. Their study in Honduras, 64%. Basically, every country you look at where there's been any studies, they all tell us that we're talking about the majority of coffee farming families using child labor. They don't do that because they're sadistic wackadoodles. They do that because they're extremely poor and they often have no choice. Starve and go to school, or come out of school and work in coffee, and then we can all eat, maybe.
Yep.
So they're so food insecure. That is why they're sending their kids to do what is backbreaking, difficult work that they do not want their kids to do. You know, when you talk to them, parents will tell you, this breaks my heart. I hate it. I do not want to do this. I have no choice.
They want better for their children, and, as all parents.
Of course. But so basically, when you do the math, you start to realize hundreds of thousands here, millions there, million and a half here, tens of thousands. We are talking about millions of kids in coffee. That is why I say, if you drink coffee and you are not paying attention, you're definitely drinking child labor.
I saw some brands that didn't really surprise me. The Starbucks, the Nestle's with the, is it just them, or is this really broad spread to kind of all, or let's say 90% of the coffee that's in the supermarket today?
I would say, there are a lot of big brands that we have caught over and over at Coffee Watch in investigations that we've done with sister NGOs. We've only been operational for less than a year, but we managed, with the help of these amazing sister NGOs, to pull off investigations in China, in Yunnan, which is where almost all their coffee is grown, Mexico, in Colombia, in Brazil. We have some more teams on the ground right now. We've found so many big brands with a range of problems: slavery, human trafficking, forced labor, debt bondage, child labor, people working insane hours. And by insane hours, I mean like 18 hours a day. And I mean people who are working, like almost all the coffee farmers that we interview, especially the harvesters, the farm workers, they talk about working 7 days a week for 3 months straight, dawn till dusk, if not more. That's just the norm. That's not like at Apple's, or it happens.
Right.
Like, just imagine if somebody made you work 12 hours a day or 18 hours a day, 7 days a week for 3 months with no sick leave, no PPE, no personal protective gear, no medical care, no social security, no pension. Most of these people are ghost employees. They don't even have proper papers. They're not really registered. So they don't get pensions. They don't get social security. We, in fact, titled a whole report, Coffee Laundering, Ghost Farms and Coffee Laundering, because that's just the norm. So essentially we found so many abuses, but just to name a few, we did a petition to U.S. Customs, which hasn't yet been dodged. Hopefully it doesn't get so. To CBP, you can do something called a 307 petition, where you ask Customs to block coffee tainted by slavery and forced labor from entering the U.S. We did that. And we named in our 307 complaint Starbucks, Nestle, McDonald's, JDE, Illy.
How's Dunkin' Donuts doing? That's a New England favorite.
So Dunkin' is named in our 307 petition. We literally believe that they have slavery and forced labor in their coffee supply chain. We think that they're buying, of course, this has to get adjudicated by Customs. They're reviewing our data. They may find in our favor. They may find against. We certainly produced a huge amount of information. I think it's one of the best cases I've ever seen go to CBP. A lot of experts helped us make it really top tier. But we suspect, we think, we allege that they are buying coffee from companies that have not just a little bit of slavery, but a widespread and systematic and recurring problem of slavery over and over and over in their supply chain.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's one of the top drivers of slavery in Brazil, and Brazil is the number one
I
coffee.
read one of your articles, yeah. Brutal.
But you asked
sorry.
a question about, like, does everyone have this problem? And I will just say that a lot of companies think they're so amazing, and actually a lot of them have many problems. We found so
greenwashing,
many.
like all of the brands that are like environmentally or sustainable or
yeah, we found slavery in certified coffee farms. There's this coffee farm that's called like the Cup of Excellence. It's like the Emmy Award winner of coffee. They were found connected to maybe forced labor.
For a blue economy to thrive, people need to use more sustainable products. But which products? And will consumers actually adopt them? Innovators like you are hustling to figure this out. Spark number 9 can tell you if there's demand for your product. Spark markets your product before it's built using online advertising so you launch smarter. Have a big idea? Vet it with Spark before you build. Visit Spark online at www.sparkno9.com or find them on LinkedIn. So I want to back up a little bit, and before we get to hopefully a brighter topic of what you're doing and what we can do differently, why coffee?
Oh, I mean, coffee just because it's one of the top 7 drivers of deforestation in the world. And a lot of people work on the other drivers, So when I was at Greenpeace, I had a front row seat to doing this amazing work on palm oil and pulp and paper. It really inspired me. It taught me so much. It got me all revved up. When I left Greenpeace and helped to get Mighty Earth going, which is, mostly ex-Greenpeace at the beginning, ex-Greenpeace folks, we kept working on cattle, soy, and palm oil, which are like the top drivers, of deforestation. But we also managed to do the first ever global campaigns on cocoa and on rubber deforestation. And we really helped turn around those industries. When I was at Mighty Earth, it was like a bombshell went off in cocoa and in rubber. And it's not that, these industries are perfect by any means, but the palm oil industry is night and day better to what it used to be 17 years ago. Night and day. So many companies now are like, no deforestation, no peat, no exploitation, they've cracked down on rape, forced labor, slavery. They've cracked down on burning, fires. People just like burned the forest because it's cheaper to do that than bulldoze, which is terrible. Obviously, it's ghastly. So anyways, palm oil got so much better. It taught me what we can do to win. And then, in part because Mighty Earth really made deforestation, cocoa, and rubber a big thing. I would say that now the other 7 high-risk commodities, there are folks really doing great work on all the other 7 except coffee. So that's why I wanted to take on coffee.
Yeah. It wasn't because you have a particular... Do you drink coffee?
I do. I love coffee. I'm Brazilian. It comes from this coffee-producing region. And I've seen with my own eyes, I used to work for Greenpeace in Southeast Asia. I saw terrible stuff in coffee in Vietnam and Indonesia. Just like, it's so extreme poverty is so common in coffee. And I just thought, wow, this is so disgusting and wrong and horrible. But really it was because we're in this planetary crisis where we've got to get ahead of climate chaos and mass extinction. And agriculture is like 30% of climate change and 80% of mass extinction. 80% of biodiversity losses from our agriculture system. So I thought, okay, let's try to do that for coffee. And then once I got revved up to start Coffee Watch, then I realized, oh God, there's like slaves and kids and trafficking. Like, what?
It doesn't really surprise me that the abuse of the planet would go hand in hand with the abuse of its inhabitants, like its human inhabitants. I feel like the mentality is kind of similar.
You are so right. That's a very deep point, actually. And, it's true what you say. And it actually applies also to ocean stuff, like the vessels that are raping the ocean, IUU fishing,
human slaves.
destroying marine protected areas, things like that, catching juveniles out of season. they tend to also have forced labor and seafood slavery.
Yeah.
So you're right. It's like the two sides of the same coin, the way you treat Mother Earth and the way you treat humans. If you're awful to one, you're probably doing terrible things to both. It's true, isn't it?
So what do we do?
Oh my God, there's so much we can do. That's the good news.
So what are you doing? First of
Yeah.
all, what's Coffee Watch doing? And then I want to know how all of us listening can be part of your movement and what we
Yeah.
can do to help.
Abigail, no one should feel despairing and downhearted and like doom scrolling into a place of cynicism and apathy, because actually, I truly believe we can make coffee better. And I think we can do it faster than palm oil. I think in 5 years, we could be having a
Wow.
totally different conversation. I will call you up and I'll be like, oh my God, it's worked. I really, really, really
love
believe
that.
it. I'm in it to win it. I think we can do this. So, I mean, basically, that we have this immense, gorgeous power. Corporations and often governments don't want you to know that, but you are so powerful. And if people really knew that, then they would tap into their power and then things would change a lot. And so maybe that's why corporations and governments don't want us to know. But for coffee, you can vote with your wallet and buy ethical coffee. It sort of depends where you live. If you're in Maine, if you're in California, if you're in South Africa or Australia or Mexico or Indonesia, there's different like good brands that are available. London, Kiss the Hippo. If you're in Denmark, I would say go for slow food coffee. If you're in Indonesia, I'd say buy orangutan coffee. There's, a bunch of good brands all over the world.
We'll put
And
those in the show notes so people can get them.
yeah,
Unless you want to,
yeah,
and
yeah.
maybe afterwards you want to name some.
We actually created this one-stop shop page on our website where people can go to find all the solutions. So there's this little guide that we made towards buying responsibly sourced coffee. It's like more ethical and sustainable. And we put all the guides that everyone has ever created to buying a sustainable coffee and like what you could look for and things to keep in mind and what to be wary of. But you don't just have to buy good coffee for yourself. Like all it takes is 1 hour of research to find the brand that matches your values, that's like direct trade and living income and agroforestry, shade grown, all that good stuff,
Can we believe those labels though? Because you just mentioned before that, brands that are presenting themselves as, sustainable aren't always. So
I would not just rely on certifications.
Yeah.
Certifications alone are not a guarantee really of sustainability for the most part. But if you look at our little guide, it tells you all the things to look for, the greenwashing to be aware of, and then all the companies that we think are doing this for real.
Yeah.
But basically, 1 hour of your time, you find the right coffee company for you, or maybe 3, 4, 5. You order a bunch of them, you decide which one is the tastiest that you love the most. Then you can just keep ordering that indefinitely, right? And, the other thing I would say is not just buying from the heart and voting with your wallet for your own coffee. You can gift sustainable coffee for brunches when you're invited, for birthdays, for big holidays. And you could tell people oh, Abigail, it's your birthday. I love you. I love the planet. Therefore, and you love coffee. So I'm giving you fabulous planet loving, people friendly coffee that's not trashing farmers and forests. Happy birthday. If you want more, let me know. So basically you become an ambassador when you do that. And I would say that's true even at a bigger scale if you're able to change your university or your school or your office. Because often your consumption is kind of peanuts compared to the institutions that you're a part of, your church, your mosque, your, wherever it is that you worship. So that's the whole vote with your wallet side of things. And depending on how big you double down on that, you can become a change maker. But then also, don't forget, most of your listeners probably live in a democracy and not in North Korea, I would say. Unless you maybe
I haven't seen a hit from North Korea yet, but I'll let you know if that happens.
You secretly have lots of Russian, North Korean, Hungarian listeners. But no, in principle, most people who are listening to your show are in a democracy. If you message your elected representative just once, that probably has the value of buying sustainable coffee for a year. And it can be on their social, it can be their email. Those people work for you. and they care about what you have to say. They
Doesn't feel like
tabulate
that
it.
at the moment.
Well, it doesn't
Sorry.
feel like that, of course, because, our democratic system is a bit broken and a lot of people have checked out but are now checking back in. I feel huge hope that people are rising up and
Yeah.
feeling their power and starting to play. I mean, like, look, there's a lot of folks in Congress and Senate who won't do town hall meetings anymore.
Oh, I know. They're
But that's
terrified.
because they're scared, because like they have their right to be scared,
Yeah.
because people are so angry at them. And I think, the phone lines are melting down in Congress but this is good, right? We have a democracy, maybe in the US and other places where your listeners might be, like Canada. And to the extent that we have it, using it is powerful because our lawmakers can pass better laws. There are even laws on the books right now proposed that could help make coffee more sustainable. So just saying, I'm your constituent, I care about coffee, that's awesome and powerful. So voting with your wallet is really cool. Using your power as a voter and a constituent to tell your elected representative, like, I drink coffee, you drink coffee, the coffee industry sucks.
Coffee,
What are you
good.
doing about it?
Right.
And it can be that simple. And then I would say, it's not just that we have this power with our lawmakers to some extent. They might not listen to us, but they do tabulate every single thing.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
But companies are even more sensitive. So if you go into companies and certification schemes like social, or you email them, they totally freak out. If you talk to the manager or the barista in your favorite cafe or in your favorite restaurant and tell them, like, oh, did you know this about coffee? I come here all the time. I'm a regular. That registers. Like, there's no
Yeah, I'm
tomorrow.
sure.
That really registers. Companies are very sensitive to consumer unrest. They do not like having their consumers know that there's all these bad things like slavery and deforestation in their supply chains. That makes them very uncomfortable. And I would say, besides messaging companies, messaging our representatives, and voting with your wallet, there's all this like power that comes from signing petitions. So we curated on that same page, that like one-stop shop, every good thing you can do for coffee, all the petitions that other people have made for sustainable coffee. And then we started 2 of them. And so now you can just go and click, boop, 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 boop. And that's also pretty high value because those things really scare.
You're probably getting some serious numbers.
Yeah. We have now over 100,000 signatures on one petition, over 70,000 on another petition. That's the kind of numbers that really, it gets you like a meeting with the C-suite.
Yeah.
It gets you a CEO who feels anxious and embattled on this. That's not an easy thing to do, but it's powerful. I mean, it is easy to sign petitions, but it's not an easy thing to grow your numbers that big. But I think petitions are powerful. They're all there on that page. And, the last thing is that most people just don't know how bad coffee is. And you can become like a truth ambassador. I'm actually a kind of glass half full person, or maybe we should say mug half full person or cup half full person because it's coffee. I think most people are not sociopaths and are nice, fundamentally good humans. I really believe that. And if they knew how shitty their coffee was, they would not be drinking it. They would be like, what? I don't want to drink child labor in my coffee.
Right.
I'm spitting it out. And I think that just telling people about what's going on is really powerful. And sometimes that can feel awkward or weird. So we also curated all the best documentaries about the problems in coffee and the solutions in coffee. So if it's just like watching a film with your family or your significant other or your friends, that if you screen one of these films, you're basically raising awareness in a whole other human or a whole gaggle of other people. So yeah, screening films is a fantastic way to spread the word. And none of these are made by us, but the filmmakers all just very kindly let us put their stuff up. And some of it is extremely disturbing and heartbreaking, but some of it's really inspirational and filled me with hope and beauty and energy. And I hope it does that for any of your listeners who go look at this.
I think this is amazing. It's amazing to hear that these things work from an insider.
Oh,
I
they
mean,
did.
that I wouldn't honestly, I maybe I am cynical. I mean, I understand the vote with your wallet problem, but I don't know that I would have thought that signing petitions really made a big difference. I don't know that I would have thought that, shouting out on social media would have made a difference to these companies. So I think it's really interesting to hear that. And
Can I tell you a funny story about
I would love
petitions?
it.
So back when I was in Mighty Earth and I was starting these campaigns on cocoa to try to change the
Yeah.
chocolate industry, the cocoa industry, I got these wonderful folks at a petition group called Some of Us, which is rebranded now as Echo. They did a petition hammering a chocolate company for their deforestation and the fact that they were growing everything in pesticides, so monoculture, and didn't even care about agroforestry at all. Their carbon, their biodiversity, terrible. And for months, I'd been trying to reach that company to start a real serious negotiation to get them to agree to no deforestation and agroforestry with a time-bound implementation plan. And I just couldn't get through. I was like, I'm gonna have to sue them. What am I gonna do? And then we did the petition. And then 2 days later, I got all these desperate messages in my inbox being like, oh, we'd love to have a meeting. We can't believe we missed your earlier messages. They went in our spam folder. And we're like,
That
when can we meet? Tomorrow? And then at the meeting, they're like, okay, no deforestation. We can do that. But agroforestry is way too much. And I was like, really? And they're like, okay, some agroforestry. It was just very funny. It really unblocked this company.
amazing. That is
So yeah,
amazing. That is a
it doesn't
great
work every
story.
time. That was sort of a
Yeah.
best case scenario. But yeah, it totally works. People should feel so proud and energized by the fact that we have these amazing superpowers at our fingertips.
Mm.
And we just, society doesn't tell us, but we are so strong and powerful. They have millions of dollars, but we have millions of people who are nice, good people who care. And that is better.
Listeners may remember Patrick Breeding, who was on our show last year to talk about Marin Skincare and its clinically proven formula that uses glycoproteins from Maine lobsters to treat eczema and dry, damaged skin. This company has since become wildly successful with this lobster lotion, and Patrick is inviting listeners to a 20% discount on their products by using the coupon code HAPPYPLANET on their website, marinskincare.com. I use this product myself, and I highly recommend it. Wow. You sent shivers up my spine. So let's say you get some change. You've got to follow up. They say, oh, we'll do a little bit of the agroforestry, but maybe they just do too little. How does Coffee Watch make sure these changes are implemented once they put the pressure on these companies? And what's your follow-through?
These are excellent questions. Essentially, some things are cheap and easy, and some things are really hard to follow up on. So deforestation, amazingly, Abigail, we now have really good, cheap satellite maps that allow us to, thank God, track deforestation in real time. Very precise. It used to be so hard, and now it's 1 meter by 1 meter.
Yeah.
You can see all the forests getting chopped down. So, if a company is deforesting and they have some transparency in their supply chain, they've disclosed their supply chain, which is what we always ask, down to either the farm gate polygon or the GPS point at the heart of the farm or the co-op, or at least the region. So, if Abigail and Etelle are both buying from the same village and we're the two big buyers, and then there's deforestation in the village, basically you just write to Abigail and Etelle and you're like, which one of you has this deforestation, or is it both of you? So basically the traceability and the satellite maps allow you to just check deforestation pretty easy. You don't have to do traceability over and over and over and over a million times, right? Once it's disclosed, unless the supply chain changes, it's there. So that helps too. Agroforestry, I think we're on the verge of these huge breakthroughs thanks to AI and ever better satellite maps, where we will now be able to tell over time if something is regreening. So let's say Abigail has a big, bad monoculture, full sun, Robusta plantation of coffee, like in Brazil or Vietnam, number one, number two coffee producing countries. They're really addicted to that form of coffee growing. And we signed an agreement, and Abigail's like, fine, okay, I'm going to transition to agroforestry. Give me 10 years. We would make like a time-bound implementation plan, and maps would now reveal if Abigail's farm is regreening or not. So you plant these trees in and around the coffee. It could be zebras, could be polka dots, could be donuts, could be all over higgledy-piggledy. And over we do stop checks every year, and we can see the progress or lack thereof. That I think is already happening to some extent. So checking agroforestry has been getting easier, and I think will get a lot easier. What's harder is human rights violations, right? But pretty easy is whether Abigail or whatever company, Nestle, Lavazza, Illy, Dunkin', McDonald's, whatever, if they commit to paying a living income, then that's pretty easy to check, right? Because if Abigail has a farm and I'm working there, anyone can just go ask, then what do you earn? And it's not like a huge thing of trust that I have to tell you, oh, I've been raped or I was trafficked. Just telling you how much I earn. That's kind of doable. You can even, Abigail can even pay it then with mobile money nowadays. That's a huge breakthrough as well.
Oh yeah, it's a lot traceable. Yeah.
So I think because so much child labor comes from extreme poverty, if companies committed to living income and paid a living wage for the farm workers and a living income price for the smallholder farmers, then that would be pretty easy to monitor. And my guess is that then child labor would plummet. Now, you'd still have to monitor it. It's not easy, but people do it. There's methodologically sound ways to go do audits and check about slavery, trafficking, child labor, sexual, gender-based violence and exploitation, and, inequality. We can have a 5-hour conversation about this. I love that stuff because it's my passion, but it is harder. You need boots on the ground. It's more expensive. It's more time consuming. It's often really great to involve local civil society groups that are trusted. Yeah. So that is complicated too, because let's say, if you're sourcing from 19 countries, that's
right.
But it's doable. It's doable.
Interesting. So, you brought up an interesting question about paying livable wages. If the coffee companies are eradicating poverty by paying living wages, what should I be paying for a cup of coffee? Is there some data on that? What should a cup of coffee cost me today in the United States?
Okay. I think it's often kind of, there's this bugaboo, or is it bugbear? I know, one of the two, that if we have a living income for coffee workers, everyone will go bankrupt up and down the supply chain, and the coffee will become unbearably expensive. The truth is, if your listeners are in New York and they go to a regular deli and they get a low-end regular cup of coffee, not a fancy latte, it costs about $3.12, and coffee farmers will only get 2, 3, 4 cents of that.
Wow.
So to pay a living income and also have human rights monitoring and a grievance mechanism that people can access and no deforestation coffee and also agroforestry, all of those things, literally your cup of coffee would just be 2 cents more.
Wow.
And here's kind of the breakdown even for a higher end cup of coffee. People just can't really believe this is true, but I swear to God, it's true. Here's the breakdown of your morning cup of coffee. Percentages. In your cup of latte that you buy at a cafe, like a chain, 0.4% of the money that you pay for your cup of coffee goes to the coffee farmer. 4% of your cup goes to pay for coffee, and 0.4% goes to the coffee farmer.
And the truth is, we want to support these farmers. Not only do we want them to have a sustainable wage, but we want to buy coffee so that these economies grow.
Oh,
and on that, I'm just wondering, what have Trump tariffs done to the coffee industry, and how is that changing everything?
Oh, it's really bad. It's so super bad for all kinds of countries that grow coffee. It's bad for coffee growing countries that are extremely dependent on the United States because of geographical proximity, for example. So Mexico sends almost all their exports of coffee to the US, which makes sense. They're across the border. They make a lot. We drink a lot. So Mexican coffee, I think a little bit less than half is for internal consumption, and almost all of the exports are for the US. And Nicaragua also is very dependent on the US market. But, not just Mexico and Nicaragua. Guatemala is super dependent. Colombia is super dependent. Okay, basically, geographic proximity means that if you historically just sold a lot to the United States and didn't bother to cultivate relationships with European buyers and Asian buyers and whatever, now you're hostage to the American market, right?
Mm.
So that's one kind of country that's really royally screwed by Trump tariffs.
Mm.
And then the other kind of country that's super screwed are the countries with very high tariffs.
Yeah.
Brazil makes about a third of global coffee, and they got slapped with 50% tariffs because Trump was angry that Bolsonaro was being held accountable for a coup. Maybe it's like coups of the world unite or something. I don't know. But so poor Brazil got slapped with a 50% tariff. That's insanely high. Indonesia, Vietnam. Vietnam's the second biggest producer. Indonesia's actually, I should say Brazil was screwed. Vietnam is the number 2 coffee producing country. They're not so dependent on the US, but they have very high tariffs, like 20%. Colombia is the third biggest coffee producing country. They are high dependency and high tariff. And Indonesia also. They're not so dependent on the US market, but very high tariffs. So the top 4 coffee producing countries got effed because they just got very high tariffs.
Yeah.
And then some countries that are especially in Central America, very dependent on the US, got effed. Also because they had high tariffs, but mostly because they're just hostage to our market. So yeah, Trump's tariffs are cataclysm for coffee farmers that are already very poor. They're among some of the world's poorest people. Most coffee farmers earn less than $3 a day. Many of them earn less than $2.15 a day. That's the extreme poverty threshold that the World Bank set. They could ill afford to lose any money. And the countries that are growing coffee are also not rich and are in need of that revenue, and they're getting effed.
It worries me that, I know that you've said it's just a few cents more to have a workforce that's well paid and have agroforestry, but I worry that these tariffs could just be the excuse that the companies use to not make this change. And so how do you combat that?
So the tariffs are already having an impact. The price of coffee is going up. And one of the things that I've learned recently that was really disturbing is that often companies will raise the price above and beyond what they had to because of something like tariffs. They will just tack on a little extra for profits. That tends to be more true for big companies than small, but yeah, and then they don't necessarily bring the prices down. And you also have something called shrinkflation, where you'll just get less coffee for the same price. Yeah. And that's, again, more like big companies that are very sophisticated in their packaging and have the ability to do revamps like that, where small companies might not be able to. But I'm extremely preoccupied that entire coffee farming regions like Chiapas and Mexico and Minas Gerais and Brazil will experience major blows in terms of like economic collapse because everything runs on coffee. That's like the lifeblood of those regions. Half
That's
of
the Dunkin'. It makes your work all the more important.
We did a whole paper on coffee tariffs, kind of begging the Trump administration to exempt coffee because it's also crazy because you can't grow it in America. You can grow like this tiny amount of coffee in Hawaii and Puerto Rico. You'd have to like raise all of Florida and like just mow down Hawaii. You still wouldn't get enough land to grow our coffee.
Oh my
You know,
God.
it's crazy. It makes no sense because the tariff is usually for something that, you know, America would otherwise be
Would
able to
make,
make.
right. Exactly.
Like,
Right.
you
No, no.
cannot grow that
These are just
coffee
punishments.
any less.
That's like spot on. I wonder if he drinks coffee. He probably doesn't drink coffee
Trump does
otherwise.
not drink coffee.
Right.
No.
Otherwise it would matter.
Yeah, he doesn't. But he does love McDonald's. So
Right.
uh,
Well,
McDonald's is one of the biggest purveyors of coffee in the world. Maybe they will convince him to make an exemption. His Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, did go on TV on Squawk Box and announce that coffee would be exempt, but we haven't seen that. There is a petition right now that was started by Representative Ro Khanna, who's amazing. He's a California congressman, really, really cool. He created a petition to actually ask Congress to repeal tariffs on coffee.
Interesting.
Because coffee farmers are so poor, this will push entire regions into collapse. Then we'll have to deal with like mass migration flows and craziness, and political upheaval and violence no doubt would ensue from economic collapse. So yeah, it's much better to like not have coffee tariffs for a lot of reasons.
Well, so I think that should be on our list of things to do. You know, we talked about contacting your elected representatives, but maybe that's a two-part. Like,
It's
you
on
know,
our page. It's on that webpage I talked
Yeah.
about with all the petitions. You just go
Yeah.
click, poof, and you can sign.
yeah.
It will go to your automatically. You know, you populate your address, and it will find your
Yeah.
representative for you.
Yeah. All right. We want to vote with our wallet. We want to message our representatives. We want to lash out on social media. We want to sign petitions, particularly yours, on the website. And we want to be our own ambassadors, sharing the beautiful coffee brands with friends and family so that they learn that you can have your coffee and your agroforestry too.
Oh my God, Abigail, can you please be my spokesperson? That was like better than anything I've ever said. I should record you. Like, save that for.
I want to know if you have any advice for other entrepreneurs, either of nonprofits or of profit businesses that are trying to make a dent in the impact economy.
Yeah. You know, I do have a big thought about what's been going on lately. You know, USAID was put into the wood chipper by Mr. Musk, and the UN has been under immense pressure because Trump cut basically a third of the UN budget.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there's a lot of NGOs that are flailing and failing. You know, philanthropy just can't fill the gap, right? And so many people who wanted to be in the impact space from the NGO side of things are just desperate. And I see many people that I know in human rights and humanitarian and public health and environmental space just experiencing layoffs and heartbreak. But I would say now is the time to be really creative, right? So, for example, a lot of NGOs that were fighting plastic have been gutted. Their funding is gone. But I wish I had my shoes here with me. I have these like shoes that are made out of upcycled plastic, and my handbag also, I don't have it here. Otherwise I would show it. It's made out of upcycled ocean, like marine plastic. So it's very resilient and it can get wet, and it's great. It's gone through several like years of an active toddler. It survived bad weather, and it is a great bag. And I have socks made out of recycled plastic. My sunglasses are made out of recycled plastic. I think now is a great time to try to move to the private sector and to take over companies that were kind of leaning towards doing good and make that their core, so that it's basically like, how can all of these people from NGOs just wash into the private sector and transform companies and hijack them for good, if you will, or start competitors, but where the whole point is that it's a social enterprise. And I just think like the coffee companies that are doing good ethical coffee, women owned, indigenous owned, organic, direct trade, living income, regenerative. This is so important for my work because what it means is I can say there are companies out there that are doing good and doing well at the same time.
Yeah.
This is proof positive that the industry can change or that it must change. And that you will not go bankrupt if you do all these good things for farmers and forests, for people and planet. This is like our moment, our generation. We are being called to step up. It's a kind of do or die inflection point. But I truly believe we can do this. I think we can.
Wow. I think I know your answer, but I always ask if people are optimistic about the planet with respect to climate change, but you're just effusively optimistic, I think, as a human, which is wonderful.
I have little moments of despair and sadness, but I try to hold on to hope. And there's a beautiful quote that someone told me a while ago. They said, hope is not a lottery ticket that you clutch on your couch and hold on to. Hope is a battering ram that you just knock this doors down with your hope. And I think that is the kind of hope that I try to hold on to and to embody. So I don't necessarily feel a huge amount of optimism about the way that our planet is heading in terms of climate chaos. But I feel this immense optimism that we can do better and we must do better.